I'm saying, the way I read this, there's potential for a discussion with the selectmen on it. That's where I'm coming from.
Yes. That issue exists today.
Yes.
And if we wanted to, we could decide to address that or not to address that. Yes. Ed, do you have any questions? This is the first time you've probably seen this.
No. No, but I'm a big fan. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I was just going through like the proposed change to number 1. The only difference between what you're proposing and what's there is in number 1 of your proposed changes is you insert the word shall where the existing says must. Otherwise it's identical.
But don't shall and must mean the same thing?
That's
yeah, shall.
Yes,
no,
it's a command. It's a command to do. You shall do it, and you must do it.
And I won't do it. So therefore.
Well, that would be my response. And then adequate off-street parking with safe ingress, egress of vehicles shall be available. And the existing says, is required.
Right, so I tried to make the verbiage more consistent, although I think that is required is, from my perspective, has the same meaning as shall, right? So if we wanted to switch those back to be more consistent with the existing language, I wouldn't argue against that.
And then number 3 is what we were just talking about, external storage of occupational equipment and supplies shall be screened from view, which I think is what it says now, and then basically you're adding of abutters and of the right-of-way.
Yes.
So you bring in definition as to what view.
Right.
I haven't digested that one yet. And I'm not sure the major changes on number 4 are based on the number. It's still, to me, it says the same stuff. The number of persons engaged in the on-site operation of any one or combination of home occupations and home-based businesses shall not be more than 4, excluding residents.
Yeah, the key change there is the on-site portion of that. A couple of years ago when we had some public input at one of our meetings about home occupations, there was a concern that the selectmen could decide to not let somebody run a business out of their home where they had 10 other people working in their own homes because there are 4 employees, because of the 4 employee limit. And I think that our concern should be about what's going on at the premises, right? It's a land use, right? And so that's why I changed that to be on-site.
So a good example of that is you work in the computer industry. If you suddenly had a stable of people that did work for you, but they were all over the world, India, China, whatever, they wouldn't count against the count of 4 people working in the house.
With the change that I'm proposing, yes.
Right.
With the existing wording in our existing zoning, I think that you would be limited to 4 employees total, on-site or off-site.
I seem to remember that we went around about that one for a while, and it was, I think we established 4 at one time, just not 4 bodies. If you say you had different shifts.
I remember having those
discussions. I think there
that
was
a big discussion.
Yeah, there were concerns about 4 at a time times 3 shifts.
3 shifts.
Right, and I think that erring on the side of keeping us reasonable and close to what we have.
Kudos to what you're trying to do, trying to clarify it. Because
but I think that if this board thought that 4 on-site total, well, if what I wrote is 4 on-site employees. If the board wanted to change that to 5, or change that to 4 on-site, maximum 2 shifts, or whatever, I mean that's up to the board to, if you accept this as a working document, go nuts with it,
Well, I think that's the kind of thing that comes up for the public when we have public hearings on this.
Well, I think that there is something that pops into mind that is a topic of I don't know, current topic here in town is that with a lousy economy, more and more families are doing some sort of agricultural activity on their land. I was just talking to Russell from down at the hardware store. He told me that he sold a very large number of bags of chicken feed in 1s and 2s last month, which indicates to him that a very large number of people in the area, maybe not all in Brookfield, are doing more backyard farming, such as chickens and so forth. Or hoarding chicken feed. Who knows? Maybe they're building their house out of it. It just strikes me that we're seeing, due to the sour economy for 3 years in a row, more and more folks pursuing small-scale agricultural activities. And some people would consider it a second business, you know, selling eggs or maybe going to farmer's market. You know, how successful it is, that's not for me to determine. And we even have several farms in town that are trying to make a go of it. But what does not, I don't see a bright line in our current zoning or in the new suggested ordinance of a bright line difference of is a farm a home-based occupation.
No, but we're an residential agriculture.
It's already zoned.
It's already zoned in there, right?
Yeah.
Farm's a farm.
But a farm is a farm. But I didn't see the difference there because I think that there's a chance that you could argue that it's a traditional home-based occupation.
Farming.
Yes.
What's your point?
The point is that if it is not acknowledged as that,
It doesn't need to be because it's already allowed.
I'm getting to the point that farming equipment is everywhere. When you work a farm, you got junk everywhere, and it's junk. It's creative and wonderful junk, but there's junk everywhere.
Please, let's not get.
Believe me, I work at a farm. I know what it's like. Are we going to put onto the small farmer or the folks who are in town suddenly the necessity that they have to shield all that stuff from everybody?
No, it's not covered by what's being proposed.
This is cottage industry.
First of all,
yeah, well, that's just it. Farming has been basically relegated to the state definition of farming and agriculture.
Sure.
And
we've already applied that to farms. This is discussing more small cottage industry.
But and this is where I'm specifically thinking of it.
Exempt from this type of regulation, if this,
well,
because you do have that type of operation. I mean, you have to park your equipment sometimes in the field that you're working.
Yeah, there's gear everywhere when you work on a farm, and you know, are you now or in the future imposing situations on farmers? Because farmers sometimes get people up and going. When people drive by, they don't want to see everything. You know, I mean, are we setting people up in the future for a bad situation where they're suddenly going to have to shield all their stuff from public view?
That's kind of ridiculous for farming. I know my neighbor across the street will park his tractor right across the street, and I wouldn't even think twice about it because that's what he's going to do to hay that field.
I understand.
I would never object that at all. That's how he makes his living.
But there are people out there who would.
We should make sure that farming should be, distinguished as a separate entity.
I don't know. I think that this, even as an argument, would only come up in certain parts of town where there's high density. You know, you think about what's it called, the Pine Woods or whatever.
Cedar Park.
Cedar Park. Thank you. The small density areas where you've got small lots. Somebody brings up some sort of agricultural use as a home occupation. Their argument is it's a home occupation. Yes, it's allowed, and yes, all this. But are we getting them in a situation where suddenly they're going to have to make a huge expense to shield everything from everybody?
No.
The existing zoning says they have to shield it from view, specifically either with a fence or dense vegetation. And it doesn't specify view from what, so it could be if anyone anywhere can see it, whether it's, I don't know, from a hilltop or an airplane or who knows, whatever the selectmen want to decide that means.
Yep.
And so one of the I think that I was attempting to potentially protect the homeowner from having to do more by making it more flexible in terms of how it can be shielded from view. It could be with the terrain, right? It's behind a hill. I don't have to have dense vegetation. I don't have to have a fence.
Can't see it anything.
If you look at the existing zoning, it's not shielded from view if there's not a fence or dense vegetation, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm attempting to address that, at least in a small way, by putting less restrictions on what the owner has to do. But I think that if somebody doesn't want to shield their equipment and it's for some sort of business, they have to make the argument today that it's agricultural in order to not shield their equipment from view. And I think that we've seen people in town bending over backwards to declare that their occupation is agricultural in order to not have to make the claim that it's a cottage industry or a trade or a recognized profession, right? The woodcutting operations here in town that have been so controversial, I think that if you're cutting down your own trees, it qualifies as agriculture. If you're trekking trees in and turning them into firewood, I think that's not agriculture as the state defines it. However, I think that's a great home business. I think that, and I think you could probably even argue that the cottage industry is firewood, right? But I think that why should there even be an argument about whether or not I can make firewood on my property, right? That's part of what I was proposing is like, look, it just says home occupations and home-based businesses. Anything is a home-based business, right? And so there's not a question of, is it a recognized profession? Is it a trade? Is it a cottage industry? Whatever the heck that is, right? If it's a business, you can do it as long as it stays small scale and you meet these, criteria for making it so it doesn't impact other people very much. You can do it. That's the way I feel. I think that Gary shouldn't have to try to bend over backwards to make the argument that trucking in wood because it's trees makes it be agriculture. I think that it's a perfectly good home-based business.
I was hoping we wouldn't have to bring that up ever again.
But
it is a good point.
I think it's a good point. And the thing is, if we address it as a home business, then the selectmen have the ability then to put appropriate limits on it in terms of scope, right? I don't think anyone really minds too much if somebody cuts a modest amount of firewood and sells it. I think that people are worried when they see on Craigslist the giant mountains of firewood and that they're going to, that they're worried about the scale of things, right?
That's got a question for you.
With the way the zoning is now, if I get a trailer that says GovernmentOversite.com on it, and I use it for like an audiovisual mobile unit, with the way the zoning is now, if somebody comes in town and my new neighbor decides they don't like that van or they don't like that trailer, presently, can they make me hide it, do something with it, or anything else?
I don't think so.
As long as it's registered.
As long as
Yeah, it's got a license plate.
Yeah,
It's a trailer, it needs a license plate. It's a car, it's got to be registered.
So what has to be shielded?
If you were,
that's good deal.
All right.
if your business was a furniture making, right, or something like that, and you're going to be working outside during the summer making furniture, then that equipment and the piles of wood and things like that would need to be shielded from view.
I'll give, because I've been there. Contractors, ladders, staging, that sort of stuff. That's what it's all about. It's not so much the vehicles, it's all the
Stuff.
extra stuff. You do a job, you have extra stuff left, you don't give it back, you take it home so that the next time you're short, you got your own little lumberyard going there.
Yeah, you're leaving all your cameras and stuff out besides, of course, the whole voyeurism cracks that you'll hear. You shouldn't, you probably shouldn't leave your equipment out in the lawn.
So I think if you look at the existing zoning today, I don't think that you could run that business out of your home. You'd have to have an office someplace else to do that business. You're not, I don't think, allowed to do that, given our current zoning.
You're talking about the staging.
No, I'm talking about your GovernmentOversite.com or whatever. It's not a recognized profession, I don't think. It's not a cottage industry in any sort of traditional sense. It's not a trade. I don't know where it would fall in there, right? I personally think you should be able to do that.
Video production company is not.
There's an interesting little thing also because his internet-based business isn't conventional to what some of to the times when a lot of the ordinances had been written. It's really unconventional, and that's something we also got to think about what somebody else may come up with later on.
Well, maybe the nature of his business.
I think it's
might
a perfectly good
but
business.
A production company they've been around for years.
Exactly.
But it doesn't fit into any of our existing zoning.
Doesn't fit in any of the slots.
Yeah.
Recognized profession?
Well, neither does Ed, but that doesn't mean that we won't have.
No, recognized professions are things like doctors, lawyers, those sorts of things. If you look up what recognized profession is, it's hard to find a